Previously on Ghosts and Legends of Oklahoma. I'd like to introduce you to some very important people that have helped me along with this project.
My name's Taylor Nance.
Logan.
Kathy Nance.
Chris Porthik.
The wine glasses on the top of the bar started shaking, and then I heard footsteps going into the back of the bar.
Investigating the paranormal is just a way to kind of explore what's out there, the unknown.
We've got 15s on this baby.
He's telling me, oh, you're going to come to a divot. And yet we're about 2 hours away from his house. And there are many divots in the road on the way to his house. So which particular divot is he talking about?
So you have the stories, you have the locations, and now you have the hauntings coming in to kind of play a part in it.
Brother versus brother, a nation in turmoil. Even the frontier of America was not immune to this bloodshed. Are the Civil War sites of Oklahoma haunted with the spirits that lost their lives during the war? We've researched it, and we've investigated it. In this episode of Ghosts and Legends of Oklahoma, we'll explore Honey Springs Battlefield, Fort Gibson, and Fort Washita. When we think of the Civil War, we think of Gettysburg, Savannah, Antietam, and other famous battles of the East. But the wars between the states reached the West as well. Blood was spilled on the prairies of what became known as Oklahoma, and it said the ghosts of the war still remain.
A lot of the forts and things have a lot of residual activity from the time when it was active because, you know, you had all of the emotions and the fights and the battles, and a lot of that they believe was actually contained within the area and within the fort.
While the first battle of the Civil War in Indian Territory took place at Round Mountain, its most famous battle took place at Honey Springs, where a Union force of 2,800 troops squared off against a Confederate force nearly double their size. That's our first stop.
Here we are at Honey Springs. Finally arriving after a very long journey.
In what?
A Chevy engine.
Honey Springs is pretty big. It's a big open battlefield.
It just seemed like it was unusually quiet, like a reverent place. So, you know, I think that kind of speaks to the fact there's been a lot of death there.
The Texas Road is there, and there's lots of history surrounding that.
The Texas Road was a major trade and immigration route through Indian Territory, heavily used by both the Union and the Confederacy. It was also this road at Honey Springs that the two sides met for battle. Some think spirits of the soldiers are still here fighting a 150-year-old war.
They say, you know, when you go at night, you can hear and see things.
It's a reverent location. You can almost pick up something in the air.
There were a few reports of hearing gunfire, you know, possibly residual.
Are spirits still here? This small ball of light was captured on the battlefield. You make the call. Just up the road is Fort Gibson, a post occupied by the Union Indian Brigade during the Civil War.
Fort Gibson is another place that's had a lot of activity reported.
It had been troops from Fort Gibson that won the Battle of Honey Springs in 1863, and the fort remained a military post even after the war. During the late 1800s is when one of Fort Gibson's more popular ghost stories began. A woman who had been abandoned at the altar tracked her fiancé down to the frontier fort and discovered he had taken up with a nearby Native American woman. Enraged, she murdered him in cold blood. After he had been buried, however, she resented her actions and began visiting his grave at night, crying herself to sleep on his headstone. One frigid evening, she froze to death on his headstone, but her spirit continues to visit his grave. Other hauntings of Fort Gibson also exist.
There was like a hospital area where they had a lot of activity, reports of sightings and sounds and even smells.
Welcome to Paranormal Vines. Those within the paranormal community have other hobbies other than just ghost hunting. We all like a variety of different things. One of the things I like to do is winemaking. And I have a few vintages that I've been doing over the years. I started back in, about 4 years ago. My father got me into it. My first was a white Zinfandel, 2007. It's pretty good if I do say so myself. It's been interesting coming up with different flavors, different varieties. I have a strawberry and an apple wine. Tried combining that with a cranberry to make a holiday. This one here is a 2008 Liebfrau Milk. It's a German wine. Essentially the translation is Love Woman Milk. You can kind of put that one together. A favorite amongst different people that have tried my wines is this Ohio Concord. For those that like sweet wines, have really enjoyed this. Unfortunately, this is my last bottle, but I do plan on making some more, so hold tight. What I'm currently working on here is a pomegranate wine. It's ready to bottle. It's been ready for quite a while, but I've been a little bit busy investigating and doing videos like this, so I'm gonna have to get to that pretty soon though. Now, something that's been interesting is discovering that there are others in the paranormal that are into this. And when I was out at the Paranormal and Psychic Gathering in Louisville back in, it was just last year, 2010, Lynn McCauley there hooked me up with this ghostly white. It's pretty cool. You can see the ghostly hands there. It says it's a sweet mellow white. I won't open this. This is a collector's item. Unless, of course, I get hooked up with another one, then I might try it. Now, just recently, I was at the Haunted Belvoir Winery out in Liberty, Missouri for Paracon 2011. And this here is a 2008 Norton. And I'll let Brian describe that to you.
He planted the grapes in 1993. So 3 years later, Dr. Bean started making the first wine. In the next 10 years, the wine was basically home brewed. We can't sell to the public. It was just his time to refine and perfect the recipes. First wine is our 2008 Norton. That is the first year that we could actually start making wine for the public.
Okay, and that is what I am actually drinking.
Yes.
It's a 2008 Norton.
And then later,
which I enjoyed, by the way.
Later in August, we'll have a 2009 Norton.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, what's cool about this bottle is the 2008 Norton was their first vintage from the winery. This bottle was also from their last case of it. So it's definitely a collector's item, and I'm not going to open this. So this is the beginning of my paranormal wine collection. I hope to add to it some more pretty soon here. It's been interesting discovering that there are other people within the paranormal field that are into wine and wine collecting. Just talking with Lee Ehrlich, also at Belvoir Winery. He has what he describes as his wine dungeon, and he described how that was all set up, and it sounds pretty cool. I'd love to check that out sometime. So this has been Paranormal Vines.
Now, Fort Washita is a different story. Actually, I would say if I was to, just based upon me and my own opinion, I would say it was probably the most active fort haunting-wise in Oklahoma.
Fort Washita was founded in 1842 by General Zachary Taylor, later president, to protect the Chickasaw and Choctaw Indians. It was later used by the Confederacy during the Civil War and is loaded with mysteries both physical and paranormal. This here is the General Douglas Cooper House. Now, General Cooper was the commander here for a number of years, and he was also the general up at Honey Springs for the battle there. He was buried here at Fort Washita. However, nobody knows where his grave is. It's unmarked and is out there somewhere in the fields. Here at the Bohannon cabin, there was a living history group here during the 1990s that stayed overnight inside. And the one night, one woman felt like she was being strangled. They all had dreams of suffocation the couple nights that they stayed here, and there was another woman who felt a dark presence hovering over here. So there's definitely something going on here within this cabin.
I love anything related to history, and the Civil War especially is great because it's something that happened on our soil, you know.
Despite the wind, we ventured into the barrack ruins to attempt an EVP session. Right now we're in the barracks. This is where the enlisted men stayed. It was a couple floors high, which, you know, the ceiling's gone, and the other floor, but the windows are still here. Much of the structure is still around, but Confederate soldiers stayed here during the Civil War. At the other end is a kitchen. There's a fireplace here. We're going to try to see if we can get a couple of EVPs, if we need somebody to talk to us here. So let's go ahead and start that. Now we're here. We're from Oklahoma, up further in Indian Territory. We're trying to see if anybody from the Civil War is still here, any Confederate soldiers. We're just curious about your time here and what may have gone on here during the Civil War. Were you Union or a Confederate? This response was found from the camera footage and not the actual audio recorder. If this is a spirit, it may not be from the Civil War period. Union or a Confederate? Did you actually see any action during the war? Did you fight up at Honey Springs? There are plenty of other ghost stories at Fort Washita as well.
You've got the story of Aunt Jane, who is constantly manifested as far as seeing her presence and being heard. You've got the soldiers charging through in the middle of the night. You could hear the drums beating from inside the barracks, which it was actually contained phenomenon within the barracks themselves. So actually when you would go outside you wouldn't hear it, but when you went inside it would be there, and it was very distant, so it wouldn't be something that would be logically within the barracks themselves.
At the time that I felt the chill at the Confederate cemetery, we were looking through the headstones, moving leaves and grass around that were covering all these different headstones that were just buried underneath them. I felt a cold spot, some like chills going up my back. The hairs on my back of my neck were standing up. I started getting goosebumps.
Haunted Fort Reno is known historically as a frontier fort and a POW camp during World War II. Also nearby is a strip of historic Route 66, which has been frequented by a ghostly vagabond. During next episode of Ghosts and Legends of Oklahoma, we'll explore both.
The guardhouse had several things happen in it where you get a lot of EVP, and there was one room particularly in there that was, it had a smell every time we went in.
The Civil War was the costliest in terms of American lives and reshaped the fabric of our country. Scholars continue to study its history, and its history lives on in the spirits that remain, and we can still learn from them. Until next time.